All right, and we're live on the Blacklist sessions. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm really excited about today's episode. We have Beck on the podcast. How are you?
I'm fabulous, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so what is it that you do? I know that there's some people listening that are very interested in what you have to do.
Ooh, that's fun. So I'm a mortgage broker. I'm basically a numbers nerd. Basically, what I do, obviously, is go and visit people in their homes and pull together their finance. That's the top level, shall we say. But really what we're doing is filtering out all the ins and outs, putting that jigsaw puzzle together and kind of making people's dreams come true, which is why it's phenomenal. It's why it's such a great job.
Yeah, so there's a lot that goes into mortgage broking, and it's kind of shrouded in mystery. Like, I think it's the whole finance sector is shrouded in mystery for a lot of people.
It's because everyone's scared of numbers. Don't be scared of numbers.
Yeah, well, that's good. Like, even from stocks and investing and just property in general, I feel like there's a lot of people out there that aren't really aware of what goes into the process. So if you could elaborate on like what it is that goes on.
You know what? One day I'm going to do one of those memes, what I do, what people think I do, that sort of stuff. So I think what people think mortgage brokers do is just find the cheapest deal. And at the end of the line, that's what we want to do for you. But it starts with filtering out who won't approve you, then deciding what's going to suit you best, working out what you need in terms of the actual loan amount, in terms of how to go through the process, then providing you with your solutions and getting you through from there to approval. And we hold your hand the whole way. So it's kind of fun, and we're quite involved in your whole process from start to finish. I've been doing this a very long time. So there's not a lot that we haven't seen before, and there's quite a bit of, shall we say, experience that comes into play as well. So you come to me and you're late 20s and you've been engaged for 5 years and you want to buy a 2-bedroom apartment, you can be sure I'm going to try and talk you out of that, because I know you're going to fall pregnant in the next couple of years and it's not going to suit. So there's top level is we just find you the cheapest deal. But underneath that, there's so many more layers, and it's such, it's a cool job.
So what's the process? So let's say that there's a young couple, they've just got engaged, they're like 23, 24, that kind of age. and they want to live together, and they're looking to buy a property because they'd rather save their money in that respect and have an asset at the end of the day. What is the process? So how much do they need to get together, like approximately?
Yep. So the answer to that is in percentages. So more or less, if you're a first-time buyer and you're buying under particular thresholds in different states, you could qualify for no stamp duty. So in that instance, if you've got around about 5 or 6% of the purchase price, you could get into the market. So it's not a really high entry level any longer. Additionally, if you have, really friendly parents who are willing to support you, you can actually get away with no deposit at all. But the more that you have, the better savings history you have, the more you're going to have a feel for what it's going to be like, and the better success that you've got. Yeah,
that's great. So you obviously do need to save up a certain amount, whether that be 5%, 10%, 20%. Hell, if you're rich, maybe 50%. Who knows?
Go for it.
So what about income? So what do you think someone should be earning on average every year for it to be a good idea to jump into something like that?
So that's a really challenging question, because how long is a piece of string? If you're buying for $500,000, the income requirement is substantially less, obviously, than if you're borrowing $600,000 or $700,000. What I will say to you is the banks are always testing you at about 2.5% over the current interest rates. So if you look at those repayments and work out what that would be at that rate, get your income, take away the tax, take away some rudimentary living expenses, take away any other commitments that you have. If there's enough left over at the end of the month to cover that repayment, then you're on track. It's a complicated situation. It's a complicated calculation, but for us, it's 2 minutes of work.
Yeah, well, that seems like a really good idea, work out what the repayment's going to be, maybe go double or even triple, and after all expenses, I guess, see if, it's affordable.
Yep, and it varies quite differently too. So if you're in a PAYG position, you get paid by somebody else, you work for someone else, then the banks work on your what you currently earn, shall we say. But if you're self-employed, then the bank works off your last 2 years' history, and each lender treats things quite differently. So that's another thing, is if you walk in the door of the wrong bank, you could very well get declined.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and it might not be that you can't borrow the money, it just might be that you've chosen the wrong branch. So that's a bit of a tip for people. If you get a no, don't stop there. Try and find out why it is, and then try and work with somebody to get to someplace better.
Yeah, that's right, because they're also different. I know for ourselves, because the business in probably the last year and a bit has done really well with all the filming. So as a result, my income's increased quite a bit in comparison to past years.
Yep.
So because we felt like we were in a good place, we had a lot of money saved up, we decided to go with ANZ because they worked off just the 1 year's tax returns.
That's a key.
But being...
now, ANZ doesn't work for everybody, so you can't just jump into ANZ. However, there are lenders that'll take your lowest plus 20%, the average of your last 2 years, or like you say, there's a couple that will rely on your most current year. As well as that too, depending on the type of business that you have, there are things that you can add back to your income. So if your accountant has written off particular things, as they do, some things can be added back with some lenders but not with others. If you're, for example, an excavator, you've got no chance of adding back the depreciation that you've lost in that tax year with some lenders, but with others they're quite happy to do so. So obviously an excavator has quite a bit of depreciation. That means that your tax return is reflecting that. It hasn't physically cost you that amount of money to run that excavator during the year, and yet you're penalised with one and not the other. Thankfully, not the other.
Well, that makes perfect sense. And I think that is a great idea why it would be good for people to talk to a mortgage broker, because the bank's going to look at it and go, yes or no. Whereas I guess a mortgage broker would work with you to go, okay, well, this bank does this, and there's a lot more inside information.
That's right. And if you're sort of halfway through the year, you can also target where you need to be for the end of the financial year. I don't know if you've ever played any of those, games like Candy Crush or whatever. If you've got a target, it's amazing how many times you'll hit that. Whereas if you're just playing, your score might be rubbish. So again, if you've got that target and I need my turnover to look like this, you will work that bit harder to get there.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I guess you could attribute that to a lot of areas. If you've got a goal, you have something to work for. Otherwise, you're just swinging in the air.
Yep, absolutely. You're just picking up whatever comes, and it's not necessarily going to get you where you want to be.
Yeah, awesome. Oh, well, that's some really good insights. So, how did you get into mortgage broking?
So 18 long years ago, I was actually pregnant, and my then boss was fabulous, and I'm going to say he forced me to buy my first investment property. He didn't. Of course, I had personal choice, but he really encouraged me to do so and pushed me through that process. And doing so, I worked out that I really loved this. I really loved the numbers, and I loved being able to help people. I also thought that it was a job that I could do at night while the baby was home with dad, and that I could then be home during the day with the baby, and it would all work quite nicely. Banks don't work nights.
No, they certainly don't.
No. So it's a job it's got extended hours, shall we say, but it's good. One of the really great things about mortgage broking or numbers in any kind of facet is you can sometimes remove emotion by using numbers. I know that sounds a bit crazy, but if you're tossing up between A and B, should I keep my house or should I sell it? Should I should I sell this one or buy this one or that one? If somebody reduces that down to numbers, it can bring a lot of clarity. So I might say to you, look, this scenario is going to cost you $1,000 a week. This scenario here is going to cost you $1,500. Immediately, one of those might be unaffordable. Knock it out. And that's true. I mean, that's a lot of games that you can do.
Yeah.
Work back to numbers on.
For sure. So I know a lot of Australians, especially young Australians that haven't bought any properties as of yet, can find it quite difficult to get into the market. But it is very much, I guess, an equation of being financially free, as you get a bit older in life. So how would you encourage someone, or what advice would you give someone that doesn't have anything yet, but they want to be financially free at some stage?
Yep. Well, don't we all?
Oh, yes.
Save. And they always say, it's not so much what you earn, it's what you keep. So reduce your expenses, cut the rubbish. If you're really focused and serious about it, then you can make decisions to forgo things now that will give you so much more in the future. Cut out unnecessary debt. You don't need the latest, greatest of everything, honestly. I have a lovely home that I'm paying off, but I still have some secondhand furniture, and it doesn't bother me in the slightest because I can afford my home, and that's more important to me. So save, cut your expenses, have a targeted goal, shall we say, and know how you're going to get there. And that might take a little bit of advice from a few people, but people are quite often happy to share that information and give you some tracks.
Yeah, so it's very much prioritising, isn't it? You know, it's how much do you really want something, as opposed to, you know, oh, well, you know, it might be nice.
You don't need a whole house full of new furniture. You don't need the shiny new car every 5 years, and you don't need an overseas trip every year. It'd be nice, it'd be great, but that stuff will come in time.
That's right. You know, you set yourself up, buy yourself some assets, and then let the interest make you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's my plan anyways, for any kind of extra expenses and kind of fun things, I guess you would call them, like trips and, you know, nice cars. The plan is to develop a portfolio first.
Yes.
And then once I have a portfolio, then the
portfolio
income
will feed
from that.
you those things. Absolutely. But it's a little bit of sacrifice initially.
It is.
And we're not so great at delayed gratification, but just it's worth it.
100%. Oh, that's great. So do you offer loans for other things besides houses?
Yep. So we do a little bit in personal lending. We do quite a bit for business lending. So if you're a reasonably established business, so 12 to 18 months or older, there's some quick and simple business loans that are out there. We do refer people to investment advisors who can then suggest shares, property, whatever else, and also find properties for them. But predominantly it's resi, tiny wee little bit of personal lending, bit of business lending, cars and motorbikes, and once a forklift. That was pretty cool. We don't do personally a lot of commercial stuff. There's other guys who specialise in that.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so for houses, like houses are obviously quite expensive. So most people would be getting loans for them. Let's say there's someone that wants to get a new car. Are there advantages to financing that, or do you think it would be better to just buy straight out?
So at the bottom line, it really depends on your circumstances. If you're a consumer, if you're just a mum and dad, then if you can afford to pay cash, pay cash. There's no interest on cash, right? If you're in a business situation and you have a personal loan, a personal home loan or non-deductible debt, then your accountant is going to advise you to take out a loan for that car and pay the extra money off of your, pay your cash off of your personal debt, which is not deductible. But we can't talk about personal circumstances here. It's just information, but it's easy stuff for your accountant and us to work out.
Yeah, cool. So as I said before, there's a lot of young people that listen to this podcast.
I love first-time buyers.
Yeah, they're great. I was one once.
We all were.
Yes, that's right. So there's a lot of folks that run their own business, and there's a lot of folks where their business have done quite well, and they've put some cash aside for investing, and they're looking to get into property, and the current market's on the way back up. What do you think you would suggest? Like, what's looking good at the moment? Is it looking for, say, properties that are yielding for like rental yield, or do you think it's better to go for capital growth?
So everybody's situation is slightly different. Capital growth is a long-term beast, and you've got to be in it for quite a while. You've got to choose your areas, and you've got to choose, shall we say, based on economies that are quite diverse, infrastructure growth, all that sort of stuff. It used to be that you could just buy in Sydney and rely on Sydney to double every 7 to 10 years. I'm not quite sure. We'll have to see. Now we have a lot of intervention, so I'm not quite sure whether we're going to continue to see that 7 to 10 year growth. It'll happen. It'll still come, but it might cost you a lot along the way. The flip side of that is if you buy something that is, so that's capital growth, obviously. The flip side of that is if you buy something that's got a bit more yield, a bit more cash flow return, then that could help you to fund one of those negative geared, capital growth type properties. So I'm really a fan of balance. Again, different horses for different people, but I'm really quite a fan of balance. And in fact, if I was thinking about investing in a property right now, I think I'd be buying a couple for return and then one for growth, shall we say, or just having the return feed in and improve the system.
Yeah, so diversification.
A bit of diversification, yeah. But what happens with something where you're aiming for capital growth and it's not always true. You can pick areas that are going to hotspot, for example, but typically it is that long-term burner, and it is going to cost you a little bit more along the way. So holding that property means you're going to run out of capacity, run out of the ability to continue to invest faster than if you've got something that's cash flow positive. So that's where the balance is really fantastic.
Yeah.
One that's going to pay for the other one's losses is going to let you stretch yourself further. Whereas if you were after something that's all in Sydney with lower rent returns at the moment, you're going to run out of capacity pretty quickly.
Yeah, for sure. That seems like pretty strong advice. I'm really interested to watch our property over the next 10 years or so, because ever since I was quite young, like the amount the property has gone up has been crazy.
It has.
And wages have not grown at the same rate. So I feel like at some point, like something's going to give, like wages are going to have to go up, or property's going to have to come down, because it's just going to become so unaffordable for a lot of people.
And this is why we're saying that we're not quite sure that we're going to get that reliable 7 to 10 year double in Sydney any longer. And Sydney's just one market. Melbourne follows a little bit suit. Brisbane's been very flat for a long time. Some of the other markets have gone backwards. But this is why we think if people reach the end of their capacity, which is what we're talking about, their income has run out, it can't keep going up. It will in time, but something's going to hold it back in the meantime. And I think you're dead right.
Yeah, well, that's right. The only way I can see it continuing to go up at the rate that it has is just through foreign investment, people from overseas that are buying up. Because, like in Australia, I feel like we're lacking in innovation. You know, we're relying on the mining pillar.
And it's gone. This is the thing. We're not making anything in Australia anymore. So now we're turning into the smart country. Well, the smart country's got to start acting like it.
I 100% agree. I'd love to see a lot more innovation getting done from the private sector and the government sector. I'd love to see them pushing more towards just getting people that are going to innovate and create those jobs and those high-paying jobs that are going to facilitate that growth over time.
And absolutely, we need more jobs, and we need more high-paying jobs. You're absolutely right. Back to that question a little bit, one of the things that we're seeing in terms of trends at the moment, we're seeing a lot of people buying dual income properties. So they might buy a piece of land and put a house in a duplex or a house in a granny flat, and that's then giving them the return that they want that feeds into the next project. And again, hotspotting, and we are Western Sydney.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot going on around here, so there's prospects there for accelerated growth in those areas versus some of the more established areas. But that's a challenging thing. You've got to be really on top of knowing what's coming to follow the hotspots. There used to be a few rules. We used to say just add water. Anything near the water would go up in value. Follow the big boys. So if Woolies is going in, for example, then it's pretty sure that there's a growing economy there, and that's something that might work for somebody. There's loads of rules like that. Obviously, you're looking for infrastructure. You're looking for changes that are going to bring more people into the area. Hospitals, schools, universities going in, that's a really good driver.
Yeah, I think that's really strong advice there, because a lot of people wouldn't consider that. They might just look at a suburb and go, oh, kind of looks like it's in a good spot.
I think I want to live there when I'm 50. It's going to hold you back from something else.
Yeah, okay. So following the big boys and just following the infrastructure, are there any tips on top of that you think would be helpful for people that were looking to invest?
Well, here's another one that's a little bit curious. We're seeing a real, shall we say, I'm going to say revolution, but maybe I mean evolution in the type of property that people want. So traditionally, people bought units because they couldn't afford anything else. Now people are buying units because they don't want to mow lawns. They don't want to do maintenance. So
I understand that.
Right? So there's just a little bit of an evolution in terms of the right property type as well. So again, if you buy... if you go into, I'm trying to think of a good example, but if you go into the wrong area or go into the right area but buy the wrong type of property, that can hold you back as well. There's areas that are very attractive for particular demographics. What does that demographic want? If they're all young people, they don't want a six-bedroom house. It's pointless to build that.
Too unmanageable.
Yeah.
And I guess vice versa. Like, let's say you're in Hunters Hill, it'd be crazy to get a unit when there's so many nice properties in the area.
Well, so Hunters Hill, because you might buy that unit because you can't afford anything else. But I tell you where it's happening at the moment is Castle Hill. So the Hillshire. Castle Hill Council are actually cracking down on some of the developers who are knocking down big 4 and 5 bedroom houses and putting up 2 and 3 bedroom units. That's not going to fit the demographic because it's traditionally a family neighbourhood. So it's having these kinds of lenses on that can mean some improved success down the track.
Yeah, so there's really a lot that goes into it, like following the big boys, following the infrastructure, and just knowing what the demographic is. So someone, if they're looking to invest in property, it would be best to speak to a mortgage broker and some financial advisors so they can work out what all these key things are.
Yeah, and there are buyer's agents as well who specialise in finding the right kind of investment for you. And it's just where you pay somebody else to do the research, and it costs you next to nothing compared to the loss you might make if you buy the wrong place.
That's right. You could make a lot of money doing it that way because, yeah, you're collecting so much information from people that do this stuff every day in the field.
Yep.
And that's something I talk about a lot is that local knowledge, and whether local be local to an industry or local to an area.
Yep.
I find that wherever we've gone around Australia, around the world, or when we've gone into a different sector, it's that real local knowledge and that understanding that's led to some incredible results.
Well, if you and I have done well specialising in our areas, why wouldn't it also apply for somebody who's trying to do the same thing, trying to invest? Go to a specialist.
Exactly. Yeah, we shot a clip over in Alaska with an artist called Jane Denham. There is a point to this. There is a point.
Good.
And we went over there, and like I am not that familiar with Alaska because I live on the other side of the world. But when we went over there, we spoke to the Ice Road Truckers because they were in the music video.
Yeah.
And we just said to them, can you find us the most scenic spots around Anchorage, like 2-3 hours around that? And they said, oh, no worries, no problem. And they took us exactly to the spot, and when they did, it was just the most incredible location ever. And we would have never found that.
No, and if you relied on a tourist guide, you'd have found the perfect spot full of tourists. Right?
Exactly. And these guys, they took us out of town about 2 hours, and it was around a place called Glacier View, which is kind of on the road way up north in Alaska, where they take all the trucks, and it's unbelievable. So it was really that local knowledge.
Can you link that underneath so we can all see that?
I certainly can. We have some great photos and the video from there. So local knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. So your company, why is it a good idea to go with you?
Oh, look, that's hard. You can't say with me, but with us. So we all brokers do a really great job. And I always recommend that you interview someone. So if you are recommended to somebody, that's a great way to find them. And if you're recommended to someone, interview them. How does it feel? Do they speak your language? Do they understand what you're talking about? And that's what we try and focus on, really speaking your language, understanding what you're wanting to do, and to try to demonstrate something really, really clearly so that you get a complete understanding of what we're doing and why. That's really key. The number of times I've met with somebody, drawn them some diagrams, explained why a particular situation might work better for them than another one, and they say, we've had that type of loan for ages, we just didn't realise that's what you do. There's some little tweaks and tricks that we can show that make a huge difference to your success on the way out. So yeah, there's no point in working with somebody that you don't get along with, but just interview them, see how you feel, see how they seem to align with you.
Yeah, 100%. And something that I guess is important too is, let's say you get yourself a 30-year standard kind of loan. It's something you're not always locked into as well. So maybe it might be worth chatting to someone to refinance as well. There's
been so many changes of late. Absolutely. So what we're finding is that, what is it? It's January 2020 now.
Oh, and God.
I know. And we've got lenders who are offering fixed rates that are well under 3%. Interest rates that start with a 2. This is crazy.
It's crazy.
Absolutely. So this is a time that we've never experienced before. And if you're locked in at something that's in high 3s or 4s, you're just throwing money away.
You're crazy. You're absolutely crazy.
Yep. You should keep on top of these sorts of things every couple of years, much the same as you would review your power bill, your insurances, that sort of stuff. Again, it's not what you make, it's what you keep.
Yep.
Here's how you can keep more, and then that more that you keep drives whatever your next project is.
Brilliant. So speaking of interest rates, where do you think you see them going from here? Because this is incredibly low historically.
It's crazy town, right? And I don't know that anybody really knows where they're going, or any of the economists predicted that they would get to here. We're hearing that there are more cuts potentially on the agenda. They are pretty darn low though. So you wonder how effective an interest rate cut would be, or if there's anywhere to go. We don't necessarily think that rates are going to go too far in any particular direction in any kind of rush. So we think that any movement is going to be fairly slow, and they're going to see it settle in before they might do something else. We can't really see interest rates going up for a while. Unfortunately, the economy just can't support it.
Yeah, I think you'll see a lot of people in trouble if they start to go up too dramatically. With the whole wages growth thing, and I just don't think they're going to go so well. And we've seen around the world. I think Sweden tried it. I think Japan tried it, and they tried the whole negative interest rate thing, and didn't work so well for them. So hopefully Australia learns from those lessons, and we don't crash the economy going negative.
We did have some interesting stuff happen last year. So around about July last year, there was some changes to the way that APRA and ASIC, the regulators, were let's say enforcing, or let's say the way that they wanted banks to enforce what they call responsible lending. So they used to say you have to test people at a minimum of 8%. In around about July last year, they dropped that down to the actual interest rate plus a small buffer, and that made a huge difference to people's borrowing capacity as well, which is it's been really interesting. So if you got to know before July, it's absolutely worth checking again, because you might be able to do a whole heap more than you thought you could do, or than you could do at that stage. The difference might mean an extra bedroom, or it might mean a different suburb that you can buy in. So it's quite interesting how that has eventuated, or what that's eventuating in.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's always changing. So yeah, definitely worth getting someone who works in the field all the time.
Fun stuff.
Yeah. So let's say we have a young person that's really interested in getting into mortgage broking, and they're really interested in property. So that would be the best thing to do, is perhaps get in contact with you. Like, how would you get a start doing that?
So it's really there's quite a bit of study involved up front, and then there's a mentoring process that happens for the next 12 to 24 months. But realistically, it's about being focused on the right outcome for the customer. And we're about to see some legislation come in that says, it's called best interest duty. Brokers have to put the client's need before their own. That's what we've been doing for years.
That is the definition of good business.
Correct. And that's right. It's the definition of good business, right? Do the right thing by the person who's in front of you, and business flourishes. However, so best interest duty is going to mean a little bit more regulation in the industry. It might mean a little bit more education, but it absolutely means that if you're coming in with a desire to look after people, to do the right thing, to build a rapport, you've got a bit of a head for math, maybe you've got some background in property, none of this is necessary, but it all will make it a lot better for you. It starts with a diploma, it starts with a Cert 4 qualification, and then you work towards a diploma qualification over a period of time. So you can start the training in over a couple of months, and then kick into your career. It's kind of interesting. It takes a while to make a decent income out of mortgage broking, unless you're taking a paid position, but it's well and truly worth it in the long run.
Because it's a lot of residual income, wouldn't it? Yeah.
It is. It takes a while to build that up.
Yeah. Well, it's like everything, you work hard at it, and over time you get a lot better, and then that residual's built up, and, collect more clients and deliver those great loans, and then before you know it, you have yourself a pretty comfortable living.
That's the aim. We're pretty proud of the fact that more than 90, probably even 95% of our business comes from referrals and repeat business. So I hope that means we're doing something right.
Definitely, it's so important. So where do you see the future of mortgage broking going?
Well, it's an interesting thing. So lots more technology coming in. We absolutely have to automate a lot of our processes, because what's happening is we're having a lot more work put onto our table. So to get the same kind of output, we've got to automate and be smart about what we're doing. On the agenda, we've got some fintechs coming in, so finance, online banks, neobanks, all that sort of stuff. We're going to see a bit of a challenge from them, although at the end of the day, people still like working with people. So, and particularly with such a really big, expensive, important transaction. So we might see a bit of a nudge from the fintechs, but hopefully we'll be able to stand our stead. I see that with lending becoming more and more complicated, like I said to you, you can really easily walk in the door of the wrong branch. We're seeing a lot more business through the broker channel, and that I think reached a peak of around about 65% during last year, and I think that that's definitely going to grow in the coming years.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think that's a really good point that you raised. Automate the back end and get that all handled. But I think at the end of the day, with such a big purchase, like having that connection and dealing with someone that you can trust is
and knowing
is
that the
important.
robot didn't miss that important detail, the person definitely didn't miss that important detail.
Yeah, fantastic. So, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
So you can pop me an email, Facebook message, dive onto the website and check us out. So our website is tworedshoes.com.au. Little bit of an interesting name. People remember it.
Yeah? Is there something behind that name?
Well, there's no place like your home.
Ah, beautiful.
So it's a little bit of Wizard of Oz reference. But it also, it was very clearly designed that we're predominantly female staff. So we find that women get often overlooked in the process, and it's kind of cool for them to know, this is a female on the other end of the line. They're going to listen to me.
Yep.
So it's playing on that empathy, or letting people, giving them a subtle hint that there's some empathy at the end of that phone.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So
tworedshoes.com.au.
So get in contact. Beck, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Again,
it's
thanks for having me.
great to have you here and delivering a lot of great information for people that aren't too familiar with the process.
Fabulous. Thanks so much.
Awesome. So you've been listening to the Blacklist sessions. Thank you so much for tuning in. We've got a lot of great guests coming up over the next few weeks, so stay tuned and who knows, you might learn something new.